Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhagavad-gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, Srila Swami Prabhupada, chapter 5, text 23. Shaknot ihaiva sohum praksharera vimokshana kama krodh hod bhavam vegam sayukta sasuki naraha. This word vague, vega, appears in the first verse of Sri Upadeshamrita, and in English, Srila Prabhupada translates that word as urge, the urge of the tongue, the urge to speak. So first comes the urge to speak, the urge of the mind, the urge of anger, and so on. Here, kama krodho bhavam vegam. Here, in this verse, Srila Prabhupada translates it as the force of desire and anger, forces. Well, we put it translated like that. So, force is a more forceful word than urge. It gives the idea of very strong power, very difficult to resist. Pretty much everyone can understand that if one is to become spiritually advanced, one has to overcome anger. The idea of overcoming desire may not be so obvious to everyone. The idea of overcoming desire is central to the Vedic yoga and Vedanta traditions. But in the Western religions, that means Abrahamic religions, that means Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, the idea seems, the prominent idea is that one worships God, and then God, like a nice father, like a father to a spoiled child, just fulfills all your desires. Desire binds us in this material world. And when desire is transformed into anger, then it drags us down. By pursuing desires in a religious way, one can be elevated to the heavenly planets. But anger takes us to hell. Later in Bhagavad-gita, Lord Krishna will state, Trividham narakasvedam dwaram nashanam atmanaha kama krodhas tatalo tasmat etat trayantyajet. Lust, greed, lust, anger, and greed are the three gates that lead to hell. Therefore, they should be given up. So, desire can be channeled to taking us up to the heavenly planets, but anger certainly takes us down to hell. And degraded desires, indulgence in degraded desires, that brings us to hell also. So it's an often asked question by devotees, how can we overcome anger? And even sometimes non-devotees, they see someone like myself dressed in this kind of apparel, and they ask, well, how can you overcome anger? In this purport to Upadeshamrita, verse 1, Srila Prabhupada recommends a revolutionary method to overcome anger. He says that, well, anger is an inherent trait within the soul, so it's not necessarily bad. It can be engaged in the service of Krishna. Once in India, one young British man, not a devotee, he was discussing with Prabhupada, and he said something like, oh yes, and then we can by becoming more God conscious, we can be peaceful and free from anger. And Prabhupada corrected him and said, well, what's wrong with anger? What's your problem with anger? The man was surprised. He thought, well, a saintly person, he must be not angry and not supporting anger. The most famous Indian sadhu in the Western world is, any guesses? Not Prabhupada. Osho, Vivekananda. Prabhupada again? No, it's not Prabhupada. Buddha. Yeah, and he's famous for promoting ahimsa. Most iconic depictions of Buddha show him sitting in a meditative pose, absorbed in peacefulness. The most famous Indian in the Western world, the most famous Indian of the modern age is, quiz question number 2. Mahatma Gandhi. And he's much revered for propagating the same thing, ahimsa, non-violence. But Srila Prabhupada, who is definitely a much greater sadhu than all you mentioned, is Vivekananda, Osho, and it's doubtful if they should really be called sadhus at all, much greater than any of them, and much more important personality than Gandhi. He said, no, anger is required. It is ahimsa. Srila Prabhupada said that Gandhi wanted to establish ahimsa on the basis of Bhagavad-gita, but the immediate or extrinsic purpose of the Bhagavad-gita was for Krishna to convince Arjuna to fight and to kill millions of men. That does not tally with non-violence or non-anger. So this is a revolutionary approach to overcoming anger. It wasn't invented by Srila Prabhupada. If you like, you could say it was invented by Krishna, because he induced Arjuna to fight while telling him, Kama krodot bhavam vegam. What is that? Shoknodi haivayasotam. Turn off that or else I'll get angry. Praksharira emotionata. Kama krodot bhavam vegam. What is it? Sasuki Nara. What is it? What's the last line? Sayukta Sasuki Nara. Yeah, Krishna, who stated this verse, he's at the same time inducing Arjuna to fight. Sayukta means that he's joined. He's a yogi. This is yoga. Narottam Das Thakur discussed these 6 enemies. The 6 enemies of self-realization are Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsaya, lust, greed, anger, envy, illusion, pride. So Narottam says that Krodha Bhakta Dveshi Jana. Anger should be directed against persons who are inimical to Vaishnavas. Well, that doesn't mean that every time a devotee gets angry that it's pure and spiritual. Anger can be a great enemy in devotional service. If anger is not, if it's illicit anger, we can say, it's a great obstacle in devotional service. If the anger is not pure, if it's just resulting out of our own desire or frustration, that is an obstacle in devotional service. In the same Prem Bhakti Chandrika, which Narottam Das says, that he will engage, dovetail is the word Srila Prabhupada uses, dovetail anger by directing against those envious of devotees, it's a half sentence. Krodh vana kore kiba, krodh tyag shoda diva. He says that what can anger not do? Therefore I should always give up anger. So he's referring here into the kind of anger that arises from mundane desire, frustration, by which a person's consciousness becomes completely covered, and he can do horrendous activities, which he later regrets. We find in Mahabharata, Yudhishthira talking about this kind of uncontrolled anger. Krodha mulo vinasho hi prajanam ehadrishyate. Anger is the root of all destruction, in human societies, the root of all destruction. Krudha papam narah kuryat krudha hanyat gurunapi. Due to anger, people can commit sins, even to the extent of killing their own guru. Krudha parashaya vacha shreyasopyavam anyate vacha vachehi kubitona prajanati karichit. Even if someone says something beneficial to others, but if he says it with an anger, with the wrong spirit of anger, then it won't be accepted by others. A person who loses his sense due to anger never thinks what should be said or what should not be said. Na karyam asti krudhasya. There's no sinful or wrong activity that an angry person will not do. Na vacham vidyate tata. And there's nothing that's so cruel that he will not say. He's completely lost control. Krudho hi karyam sushoni na yathavat apashyati na karyam nacha maryadam nara krudho na pashyati. If one becomes angry, he may do things which he just couldn't have imagined doing previously. If someone's overcome by anger, then you just don't know what they're going to do. They could do anything. Completely loses all sense of proper behavior and proper dealing. So there's a whole, in the Western world, there's a whole major division of practical psychology called anger management. And I know of devotees who are mandated by law that you have to, I'm talking by law, I'm talking about the government law, not the ISKCON law. They're mandated by law to take courses in anger management. So as psychology has become very popular in our movement, we can also discuss this aspect of psychology, anger management, but from the perspective of Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. Everything we need is given by Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. And discussing these points when we're not angry will help us if and when we feel the rising of anger in our heart. The rising of anger in our heart and its further consequences are described in Bhagavad-gita. Dhyayato vishayan pumsa sangasteshu prajayate sangat sanjayate kama kamat krodho vijayate. By contemplating the objects of the senses, one becomes attached to them. From attachment, desire arises, and from desire, anger. From desire comes anger, because if the desire is not fulfilled, we feel frustrated. And if the desire is fulfilled, we also feel frustrated, because it doesn't bring the happiness that we expected. It is simply imagined that we will become happy by fulfilling some desire. Then krodhat bhavati sammohat smriti vibhramaha smriti vramshat buddhinasho buddhinashat pranashrati. From anger one becomes completely bewildered. Then we completely forget that who we are, what we're supposed to be doing. Our intelligence becomes completely destroyed, and our whole situation becomes completely destroyed. Our whole Krishna consciousness, everything can be spoiled very quickly. So rather than lamenting when we lose something or desiring something that we don't have, we should come to the platform. Na shochati, na kamshati, not lamenting, not desiring. Regularly hearing the messages of Gita and Bhagavata is most helpful in this regard. The best psychological medicine is regularly hearing of Gita and Bhagavatam, by which we can understand our actual constitutional position, we can understand how we should act in a manner that is favorable for our real self-interest, and avoid acting in ways that will cause our downfall. We can remember instructions of Shastra. For instance, Tatenu Kampangsu Savikshamano Vujana Evatma Katambikakam Vivadva Pubir Vidatanam Asteji Rod Jiveta Yo Mukti Prade Sadaya Bhag. In all situations, we should think that I am receiving the results of my previously performed activities. In situations which we don't desire, we should think, is Krishna's mercy on me? I deserve this undesirable situation. In materially favorable circumstances, we should also think, this is Krishna's mercy on me. Now I should serve Krishna more than I have the opportunity to do. If one lives one's life like this, offering respect to Krishna with his mind, body and word, then he's guaranteed to go back to God. It becomes his rightful inheritance. So when things go wrong in our life, we need not lament or blame others. We should think, well, I deserve this. Krishna is kindly giving me what I deserve. We can, whatever difficulties we have to face, we can see them as Krishna's mercy. And what about the injunction to be angry at those who are envious of devotees? Yes, we should be angry at those who are envious of devotees and envious of Krishna. In such a case, if one is not angry, then that becomes a fault. Generally, anger is considered a fault, but to fail to be angry against those who are envious of Krishna and his devotees, that is a fault. Hanuman is glorified for burning Lanka. He was a minister to the king of the monkeys, very wise despite having the body of a Vanara or monkey. So he could have counseled Ram that, why are you going to chase after Sita? Just become a Buddhist. Be peaceful and meditate. But Hanuman became fully enlightened. We have to serve Lord Ram. This rascal Ravana must be killed. So in Bhakti, there is not mundane anger, but there is spiritual anger. But we have to be careful in exercising that anger also. It is a very powerful force. Another very powerful, calm as a desire is another very powerful force. Sexual desire is a very powerful force. That can be engaged in Krishna's service also. Dharma viruddho bhuteshu kamosmi bharatarshava. Krishna says that the sex, which is sexual activity, which is not against religious principles, that is me, Krishna says. So, sexual activity can be engaged in Krishna's service in a very positive way for the intention of producing Krishna-conscious children. Still, it's a very powerful force, and if it's not properly regulated, it can drag the devotee down. Similarly, with anger, that it is, in certain circumstances, it is proper to exhibit anger, but we should be very careful lest it go out of control. The anger should be exercised for the sake of protecting devotees and for rectifying the offensive person. In the 11th canto of Bhagavatam, it's mentioned that the medium-level devotee, he neglects the envious. He doesn't interact with them. Why should he not try to purify them and make them also come to devotional service? If the preacher is not expert and he deals with persons who are very offensive to Krishna, they may become more offensive. They're likely to become more offensive. In the Shanti Parva Mahabharata, Bhishma Dev expounds at length on the evil effects of mundane anger. And I'll just read one quote, which is just one of many quotes which are very instructive for all of us. Bhishmadev stated, even if one is attacked with harsh words, one should not counterattack in the same spirit. Rather, someone who is attacked angrily, verbally attacked angrily, by his not responding to that, by his not becoming angry, that's a half sentence. In one sense, simply by doing that, he conquers the angry person and takes away all his pious credits. Any person who doesn't become angry when angrily insulted and does not respond to flattery with counter-flattery, who is so tolerant that even if he's beaten, he doesn't beat in reply. And to not wish harm even to the person who wants to harm him, or who actually does harm him, will find that even the demigods, they desire the association of such a saintly person. A sinful person should be forgiven by the person who insults or physically assaults. Yeah, a person who is insulted or physically insulted, he can forgive them. This is the path of elevation. Of course, in devotional service, we may have a somewhat different outlook. Not exactly, but the point is that if someone insults us, we don't become disturbed. But if someone insults a devotee or Krishna, then we should become disturbed. But on our own account, we shouldn't become disturbed. So this seems to be a very high level of instruction. It may seem very difficult to do, but that is required to come to this standard. That is the meaning of Trinada Pisu Nichena Tarora Pisu Amadina Manavena Kirtana Sadhana. So by discussing such topics, we can start to advance in such a way. When we come together with devotees, we shouldn't waste our time just talking small talk, socializing. We should engage in kirtan together or discussing philosophical matters related to Krishna consciousness, or devotional service together. Such topics as discussing how to overcome desire and anger, these are vital to our spiritual advancement. So a little discussion today about something that is relevant to the lives of all of us, to a greater or lesser extent. Some people are somewhat fiery by nature, others are quite cool by nature. Those who are cool by nature doesn't mean that they're automatically self-realized. They may take offense within the mind, but not express it. Okay. Hare Krishna. Any question about this, please?
Yes, you mean our...
Oh, too late. Oh no, alright, give it here first. That's good. Do we have another mic for questions? Just 1 second. Please just wait one. Just one second. Do we have another mic? I think it's not needed in this small room, but anyway, as you're next to it, you can.
What is the definition of Shastra, definition of the holy man in Shastra? Who is a holy man, who is a saintly man, who is not?
Yeah, it's a bit off topic. What is this strategy have to?
She says, I want to.
On topic?
On topic. My question is
She's on topic.
You mentioned that we should not protest when we are attacked by words or physically. But what does it mean? It's very hard to understand. Because the Lord has given us this body, so we have to keep it in order. And if anyone attacks us, we should give adequate response. If someone beats us with a stick, we shouldn't allow that. We shouldn't defend ourselves, our life, our body, and our motherland. Isn't it so?
Yeah, very good points. The point is that if one is insulted, one need not respond by insulting the person in return. If home or property is attacked, we may defend that, especially for our family. If physically attacked, we may respond if necessary, but but better would be just to remove ourselves from that situation. As far as defending the motherland, this idea is nonsense. I spoke about that extensively yesterday. When were you born? Which year? So maybe you were one of the Nazis who got killed in Russia in the previous life. She can't believe that she could have been such a nasty Nazi.
She says maybe it can be possible. I don't know.
Yeah, so what's all this motherland nonsense? Yeah, give him the mic.
In his purport of Bhagavad-gita, Canto 1, text 37, Srila Prabhupada says,
Canto 1, chapter
1:36. Vedas define one.
Canto?
Bhagavad-gita.
No, it's Bhagavad-gita. 1:36. Vedas define 6 types of crime.
Aggressors, atatai.
Crime that deserve severe punishment. Number 1, attempt to poison. Number 2, setting house to fire. Number 3, attempt to kill with a little weapon. Number 4, burglary. Number 5, taking up one's land. And number 6, stealing one's wife.
Yeah, stealing one's wife.
So those who commit these crimes should be killed on the spot, and killing them will not make anything.
Yeah, and the Pandavas, the Kauravas had performed all 6 of these kinds of aggression against the Pandavas. So what should we say? In one part of Shastra it says something which appears to be contradictory to another part. And we'll find much of the Mahabharata is Yudhishthira on one side versus Bhima on the other. One side saying, no, we should be peaceful, the other side saying, no, we should be aggressive. And both of them citing Shastra. The different instructions in Shastra are suitable for different persons in different circumstances. For a Kshatriya to be angry and to punish such aggressors is his duty. For the Transcendentalist who wishes to be released from this world, he should give up all anger. Anger engaged in the service of Krishna is purifying. Anger employed by a Kshatriya to protect the citizens is also purifying. Not directly on the spiritual platform, but it helps to purify on the material platform. But ultimately, ultimately one has to become Krishna conscious. And for most devotees in the world today, most of the time they're not going to be engaged in angry activities. For a Kshatriya to become angry inappropriately is also sinful for them. For instance, the great devotee Dhruva Maharaj became excessively angry when his brother Uttama was killed. And he was prepared to kill all the Yakshas because one of them had killed his brother. So all these instructions are to be understood in context. Nevertheless, the statement is there. Here in Bhagavad-gita, which we read just now.
What's the last statement?
This verse we read, Bhagavad-gita chapter 5, text 23. Should overcome the forces of desire and anger. Shadmati haivaya sodham prakshareram vimokshanat kama krodhodhavam vegam sayukta sahsuki naraha. Before leaving this world, before quitting this body, if one can overcome the force of desire and anger, he can be happy in this world, and he is a yogi, sayukta, sasukhi naraha. So again, anger is a very powerful force. It is required to be used properly in certain situations. So we should be very careful in our use of it. Any other questions? Is Radhika Gopinath?
Yeah, he's over there. He went out, he's outside.
I see. Yeah, please.
And Srila Prabhupada writes in his books that in order to make spiritual advancement, one has to be frustrated in material life. And in today's lecture you mentioned that frustration leads to anger. Does it mean that the more spiritually advanced we are, the more angry we become?
Yeah, that is a false logical. No, if you are in the science of logic, this is a logical fallacy. To use a word in one context and then to take it in another context, draw an erroneous conclusion. Yeah. In the one context, I was speaking in the context of frustration as an aspect of anger, that one feels rancor within the heart. To be frustrated in material existence means we feel that all our endeavors are coming to naught. When we become hopeless of attaining material happiness, then we may, if we're pious, seek spiritual life. That is a common logical fallacy, that we use a word in one context, in one statement, and then use it in another context, in another statement, to draw an erroneous conclusion. It can sometimes be used to deliberately mislead. Okay, so we finish that.
Good Maharaj, if we conquer our anger, is it true that around us will be a spiritual world and we'll get rid of it? There will be a spiritual world around us. Around the person who has conquered his anger, there will be a spiritual world around. And we'll get rid of all our sufferings. Can we conquer our anger by means of devotional service?
Overcoming anger is one aspect of the whole project of becoming fully Krishna conscious. Even in this world, we live in the spiritual world if we're fully absorbed in Krishna. One is said to be liberated in his very life if he engages all his activities, thoughts and words in the service of Hari. But mundane anger will take our thoughts away from pure Krishna consciousness. Our goal of life is not to become free from anger per se. Our goal of life is to become fully Krishna. But the perils of anger are discussed in Gita, throughout Mahabharata, widely in Shastra, because anger is a very dangerous force. When that's it? Okay, so we'll finish.
There will be some prasadam, sweet distribution. Shall I announce books?
Yes, please.
One more question is there.
Okay, leave this here.
One more question you'll take?
Okay, one.
No, that's...
Oh yeah, there's the unspoken.
Есть еще незаметные препятствия.